Hi, good morning or good evening, everyone. Welcome back. In this section, we are going to look into about that demonstration of the files and file permissions. We had that in the previous section about that introduction of file and file permissions. But in this section, so we look into that. What are the different scenarios of that setting the file permissions using octal representations point of view, and as well as symbolic notations. And yes, like as we were understanding one more important point from that introduction, the file level permissions and the directory level permissions, and how to change the groups and how to change the owners of the files. There are some points. Yes, we look into that the demonstration wise one by one. Let me start off in it. Now presently I'm in that the current directory, that is yes, user home directory. I just started a vacant machine, the CentOS, and I'm in that home directory of it. And first of all, understanding, if you'd like to know that what are the files and folders are there, and that file, who is the owner for the file or directory, and what is the group of the file or directory, and what are the permissions that we have that at user level, group level, and that's like others level. How do we know that is? Yes, as we know that ls-l command, which is going to help with that. But here we don't have the CINI files. Let me just access that some etc folder. So if you try to access that yes etc folder, yes, here you see that there are all the folders and files, and we know that how do we differentiate it? Is it a file or directory? The first character. And now in this section, like especially permissions point of view, important thing on the file or directory, these 9 characters, we are going to look into that. Anyway, first character, that's file or directory, that's already we had it, and after that's 9 characters, and as well as the owner and the group on that file or folder. At these points we are going to look into that. Now if you see that's ls-l on etc folder, that is it is given the so many files and folders, and each and every file or folder which is having the 9 characters, that is first 3, as like we are understanding 2, 3, 4 characters for that user level permissions. Who is the owner of this file? That is root user. And the next group permissions, but which group is belong to that? That is group is also root. And others, that means other than root user, what are the permission they have that. There are the points already we had it from the introduction section. Now let me show this one more thing. Like suppose within the etc, the password file, if you just observe that, this etc password, who is the owner of this etc password? That is root. And who is the group? That is also the root. And user or owner, what are the permissions he is having? What are the permissions he is having? That is a read write only permissions on this password file by the root user, but he cannot do that by default executions. And group of the root group, the users who belong to the root group, they can perform this only read permissions, but they cannot do that write and execute permissions. And another option which you are understanding, others, that means who are logged into that to this server, then they have the only read permissions. There is no write and executable permission. That is understanding about ls-l command output. Now what do I do? That is I go for creating some files, and we'll try to work with that. Setting up this or modifying the files, and with the symbolic notation and octal notation. So for that I'm just going to create I'm just generating this output to that one of the file, user start.txt. And by default, what are the permission it is having? If you just observe that, who is the owner of this file? Vagrant, and he is having that read write permissions. And Vagrant group of the users, they have the read and write permissions only, and others they can do that only read permissions. So that's about the default permissions of the file whenever we create a file. Yes, current which user we are using? Yes, we have logged in as a Vagrant user. Yes, who has created file? Now we have created file. Who has created? He is the owner of that. And this user is belong to that which group? The primary group is a vagrant. Yes, that is showing that is as a vagrant group. So who has created file? So he's the owner, and that person, which group he belongs to, that group is that the group of the file. Yeah, that is understanding. And can I view the file content? Yes, user, I mean, as we have the permissions on, currently I'm using this vagrant user, I'm the owner, I have the read permission. I can read the file content. Cat is like as a reading the file content. I can view the file content. Can I modify the content of this file? I'm the vagrant user. Can I modify the file content? Yes, this file is having the right permissions also for this vagrant user. Yes, I can do that, modifying that as well. As suppose if I'm just running that w command and I'm just redirecting to that users. uh, what is that? Yeah, so w is greater than and users.txt. And am I able to modify that? Yes, I'm able to modify that the file content. Before it was like logged in users information, and now it is showing that w command, that's which user information, that's user, and what is the current CPU utilization, and some more information of that w command, whatever the output we got it, that it has been updated to this user.txt. That means we are able to update the content as well as we have the permission ww for write. Can I remove and read the permission of this user? Yeah, suppose I'm going to remove that. How do we change the file permissions? What is the command that we can use it? Chmod. And I'm going to remove the read permission, u minus r, that is u, the user level, and minus, as we know that that is removing that permission, but which permission we are doing that? R. And on this file, that is users.txt. Now if I check it that ls-l, now the vagrant owner, he can do that only write operation, but he cannot read it. Suppose now if I'd like to read that, read is nothing but cat command, right? Cat or view command, if you use it, yes, there are like a read option. If I use it cat on this file users.txt, is it going to accept it or not? Yeah, I mean, now the vagrant user we are using, that vagrant user, he is not having the read permission. Now if you check it, yes, it is saying this permission denied. Yeah, we have removed the read permission, and after removing that, you are trying to read the file with that user, and that user is not having the permission to read the content. It is denying the permission. And can I use it less command on this? Less and users.txt. Let me try it. Less is also just like reading the content, right? Is it going to accept it? Can you guess that? Yeah, because that user is having only write. He doesn't have the read and execute permissions. So even for that, the less which is showing about it content of the file, right? Pagination. Even that is also not accepting that. That is permission denied. But can I modify the file? Suppose I'd like to redirect this command output to that user.txt. That means id command, whatever the command output we have, that's we are updating to the user.txt. That is a modification. Is it going to work it now? Yes, it is going to work it, because on this users.txt, the current user, he's having the write permission, but he doesn't have the read or he doesn't have the executable permission. He can update the file, but he cannot view the content of the file. Yeah, so that's the point. Like for the user level, group level, and others level, which permission is required? Only read option, or read and write operation, or only write or execute on the basis of the user or groups or others. who needs to access the files and the scope of them to manage the file systems, yes, which we can define the file permissions by using chmod command. Suppose now next what do I do, that is I do remove the write permissions on this file. Now this file is having the user level. What are the permissions we have for that user level? The only write permissions. There is no read, there is no execute, there is no write. Even I would like to remove that write permissions also. How do I remove that write permissions for that user? Chmod user level, I would like to remove write permissions. And on which file? That is users.txt. If I run this and if I check it, that file permission, yes, now on this file for this current user, he doesn't have any permissions. He doesn't have the read, write, and execute permission. Everything it has been removed. Now if I would like to update it, suppose I'm going to redirect this content to that user.txt. It is like as update, right? Modification of the file content. Is it going to accept it? Yeah, if I run it, it is not accepting. Permission denied because you don't have the right operation on that file for that user. Can I view the file content? Is it going to accept it? No, even we don't have the read permissions also. Read you don't have, write you don't have. Then I mean it is showing that permission denied. Yeah, so this is one point what we can understand. It is any user you are using that is non-privileged user. Non-privileged user is nothing but other than root user. Other than root user, like a Vagrant is a non-privileged user. He is not the root user. So other than root users, on the base of the files and the folders and what is the group they belong to, that and the owner's point of view, owner level, group level, others level, what are the permissions that it has been defined on that file or a directory, then they have the rights or permissions to access the files or directories. Then what about the root user? Okay, now let me switch to that root user. Now which user I am using? Vagrant user so far. But I would like to switch to that root user. How do you switch to the root user? Sudo su. This command is going to helpful. Now I have switched to that root user. I am the root user. I belong to the root group. Now what do I do? That is I go for the creating one more file. Let me create one file, if config. I'm just writing that if config output to the interfaces.txt to this file. Okay, now we have created file and we have added the content to the file. And file permissions, if you check it on this interfaces, who is the owner of this? Root. What are the permission he is having? Read and write. This is the normal file. And group root. This group of users, what are the permission they have? Only read. Others, only they have the read. Fine. That's about that interfaces. One temporary file I have created and it's good. Now, what I do that, I will remove all the permissions. How do I remove that all the permissions on that file? Can I remove that? How do you do that? Can you think of it? Yeah, so the setting the permissions, chmod, fine. But what are the permissions? 0, 0, 0 as a octal notation. The user level, first 0 indication user, second 0 indication group, third 0 indication others. User level, group level, others level, completely I'm setting the 0. On which file? Interfaces.txt. Now if I check it that this file, now everything is blank. This is anyway file, fine, but remaining 9 characters blank. Root user doesn't have permission, root group users doesn't have the permission, and other group users also, they don't have any permissions on this interfaces.txt. But suppose now, but which user I have logged in? Root user. Now let me do that. Cat, let me try to read the file content. Cat with the file name. Yeah, I'm able to read it. But in the normal non-privileged user, if you remember that, the user is not having the read permission, he cannot read the content. But root user wise, we are running this command with root user, but the current root user, he doesn't have any permissions, even though he is able to read the file content, because he is a super user. Even he doesn't have the permissions also, he can access it. Let me update that. Suppose I'm trying to redirect this ls command output to the interfaces.txt. That means I'm updating the content. Is it accepted? Yes, it is accepted. It is not saying the permission denied, because root is allowed. Whether he's having the permissions or not doesn't matter. That he is a super user. He can do all the things irrespective of the permissions. But other than root user, yeah, though which user is that, he's the owner or not, which group he belongs to, that or he belongs to the other group, on the base of that the permissions which have been set up on the file or directory, then he will be having that privileges to access it. But root user, he's not having, it is not required the privileges to him, and he can access that all the files and the folders irrespective of the permissions. Yeah, so that's one point, as like understanding root user and non-privileged user, the permissions on the files and the folders point of view. And one more point, executable permission. Executable we didn't see so far, but executable which files? Like here, this interfaces .txt, is it executable file? What is not an it is not an executable file, right? So executable files, the binaries. Suppose if you just browse it ls-l and in the bin folder, yeah, these are all the executable files. So we need to have X permission. X is like as executable. Suppose you have one .sh file, and if it is not having that X permission, then you cannot execute that shell script. So if you'd like to execute any shell script file, the shell script file should have executable permissions for that user. Otherwise, he cannot execute it. Yeah, binaries or user binaries. Yeah, all these files should have that executable permission. You see that they're all having executable permissions. Yeah, read, that is content reading, write, updating the file content, and X, yes, you can execute the file or not, but X are executables which are helping for binary files. The bin files are the executable files. If you'd like to execute it, yes, we need to have the permission, that is X. And one more point is, whenever we are checking about it, ls-l command, it is giving that all the permissions in which notation is, these are all, we can call it as a symbolic notation, R, W, X, they're all the symbols, symbolic notation. But we were running one more command, stat also, right? Suppose stat, if I use it on etc password some file, now you see that this etc password access point of view, it is showing that numeric notation 0 0, you can skip it. That if you have the 4 characters, you can skip it. Normally we are saying that for 3 characters, right? The first character is for that the user level permissions, and second character group level, and third one is others. But like leftmost the 0, what we can say, we can ignore it. That is that is, you don't need to consider about it. The leftmost list 644, then what is the meaning of the permission? User level 4 plus 2, that is 6. That means read and write. What is the group level? Read permission. What about others? They can read that file. Yeah, this is here you can see that octal notation, that's numeric notation, and as well as symbolic notation also. Yeah, user he is having the read, write, and permissions. Group he is having the read permissions, and others they have the only read permissions. Yeah, so with the start command also you can see that the permission in octal notation and as well as symbolic notation. Both notations you can use it, but ls-l by default it gives that in the format of symbolic notation. Yeah, so that's about understanding the file permissions at a normal user level, root user level. Root user, even he doesn't have the permission also, he can access everything. But the user or a group or others, on the basis of the file which is accessing, that file level, what are the permissions it has been defined, on the basis of that he can access the files or folders. Yeah, so that is the one section which is going to helpful. Yeah, next if you just observe that some more activities understanding about it, how do we remove or how do we add that permissions with octal notation, numeric notation, some examples we look into that. So far we just understand yeah, like user related the permissions and root user related the permissions, and how do we view the file permission using ls command or start command. Yeah, that is the small section quickly understanding about the file permissions. In the next section I will add it about it, the how do we change the permissions using chmod with octal notations or with the, here it has been used some symbolic notation, right? U minus x or u minus r, u minus w, we were using that little bit, but in the next section, as like the video length to minimize it, I'm just going to use it one more the record session, I'm going to give it to you as like how do we explicitly work with that octal notation and as well as symbolic notations. Yeah, so that's all from this section. I'll come back that some more concepts on this permission in the next section.